So I played Sam Clovis. He's a victim of Spygate, and the FBI used him to get to George Papadopoulos. Then Michael Caputo, remember, he was in the process of having to sell his house until he put a GoFundMe page up, and people helped pay some of his legal bills. And he says at least 2 spies approached him. The president saying Spygate is unprecedented in our country's history, and mentioned it in his rally last night. And then you have the media downplaying it all. Well, they're not spies, they're informants. As we told you last night on TV, it's the same thing. Investigative reporter Sara Carter is with us, Fox News contributor David Schoen, who is a criminal and civil liberties attorney. Thank you both for being with us. David, let's go to the legal side of all of this. Is there a difference between an informant and a spy based on what we know this informant spy was doing with Clovis and Caputo and Carter Page?
Not in this context. It's absolute baloney. What one of the speakers said earlier, that a spy generally refers to someone trained in spycraft, etc. That's not how the term came about. The term came about from a couple of cases in the United States Supreme Court, Messiah and Weatherford. And generally what it means is somebody inside already inside the defense camp reporting out information. I've had it in cases before in which specifically an informant, a co-defendant in the case, was reporting out to the government attorney-client privileged information, which is abhorrent, of course. But generally, a spy in the camp means somebody already in the camp, not a trained person coming in. This would be exactly fit the bill based on what we know so far.
Sara Carter, let me go to you because you have known, as I have known, and I was kind of trying to be, I guess, cute on TV by saying, am I going to recognize this guy's initials? I think I said it to you a couple of times, but everybody knew who it was. And the way this guy went at Clovis and Caputo, and the way he went at Carter Page, and, you know, well, I worked in 3 administrations as the policy director, trying to convince them that he was a big Trump guy. And in reality, he was seeking information.
Yeah, exactly. And he was using Clovis as a conduit, right? And all you have to do is go back and think back to the very beginning when, President Trump on March 21st, 2016 announced to the Washington Post his list of foreign policy advisors. He mentions Carter Page. He mentions George Papadopoulos. All of a sudden, Comey, he raises his ears and says, oh, wow, Carter Page, this is the guy that we dealt with in 2013 on this Russian spy case. Let me go brief Loretta Lynch. So he runs over with Andrew McCabe, and who was fired for lying, and who's been involved in all of this as well. He runs over to Andrew McCabe. They go brief Loretta Lynch. They talk about possibly giving a defensive briefing to a senior official inside the Trump campaign, and then they decide not to. And then they go ahead and they brief senior members of the Obama administration on this. And then they decide not to give that defensive briefing, again, based on all the evidence that's at hand. So we know that early on in March, they were already concerned about Carter Page. But Carter Page wasn't enough. At that moment
let me just stop for 1 second. So this is a guy that still to this day has never met the president or the candidate, never met Donald Trump in his life. So they're concerned about Carter Page, who's about to take a trip to Russia to give a commencement speech. Carter Page, who had already been an asset for the CIA and the intel community and the FBI, so they knew Carter. He cooperated, they told me last night, and he was always willing to be debriefed and help his country out, what he told me, again. And so why didn't they just go to the president's then campaign and say, guys, there's somebody you don't know that we have an eye on that might be making contacts with foreign operatives, a hostile regime, Russia, a hostile actor, Vladimir Putin. Wouldn't that be what protocol, wouldn't that be what the law would even require?
Absolutely. That is what the law requires. It requires them to let the campaign know if they feel that there's a problem, and that's even questionable here because according to all accounts, Carter Page was very willing to cooperate, and he had sent letters even later that year to FBI Director Comey about his willingness to cooperate with them on anything that they needed, and he did so in the past. So then Carter Page goes to England in July, and lo and behold, guess who he meets? Stefan Halper. And Stefan Halper befriends him there, and they talk. And he continues to talk to him. And then later on in that year, and this is where Sam Clovis comes into the picture, he meets with Clovis. And Clovis is
and this is in August of 2016, correct, just to give people the timeline. Okay, go ahead.
In August of 2016, exactly. He meets with Sam Clovis here in Washington, D.C. He sits down with him. He has a meeting, and he never once mentions, Halper never once mentions to Clovis that he had already been talking to Carter Page. And that, I think, is very interesting. And I think Clovis brings up a really good point there. Instead, he brings up George Papadopoulos. Right? He starts poking around at that. And then a few days later, Halper emails.
And they're asking Papadopoulos, what do you know about Russian emails and that they found? I don't know anything.
Yeah. Well, and even Alexander Downer, now that he has been interviewed by the Australian, so he gives an interview. He is the Australian diplomat that Papadopoulos spoke with when he was in London, the one that he apparently passed the information on to, that he had heard that the Russians had some information on Hillary Clinton that could be damaging. But even Downer himself says, Papadopoulos didn't even talk about emails. He didn't talk about emails or anything of that nature. He just said that he had heard from this professor, this elusive professor, Joseph Misfud, who shows up in the picture, who, by the way, is very well connected to Western intelligence, not necessarily Russian intelligence. There's a great article by Lee Smith today on Joseph Misfud and all the mystery surrounding him, which isn't so much a mystery. He was a professor. He was teaching all over Europe. He was very well connected to Western intelligence, and frankly, very well connected. It appears that he had a lot of respect for Hillary Clinton and the Clinton campaign, and belonged, was a donor to the Clinton Foundation, apparently, or had done some work for them, according to Lee Smith's article. So that's very interesting in and of itself. So then Downer, and all of these people are explaining what's going on here, and we have to ask ourselves this very important question, and it goes back to what you said, Sean. In the very beginning, if there was any concern whatsoever that the campaign would be tainted, that the Russians were somehow trying to access members of the Trump campaign, why was a defensive briefing not given to them?
Let me go to another issue. You're raising so many good points, and I know David wants to weigh in on that, but I'd be negligent if I didn't bring up this ridiculous New York Times story. Mueller looking into whether it constitutes obstruction, the fact that in March of 2017, Trump confronted Jeff Sessions over his decision to recuse himself. Now, the president has been tweeting about this all day, and it shows how desperate to me how Mueller has become here, because the president, as president, and correct me, Attorney David Schoen, if I'm wrong, has the constitutional authority to tell anybody in the Justice Department what to do or not do, to prosecute or not prosecute. That is within the president's executive powers, correct or wrong?
Correct. The Justice Department, as you've said, it comes within the President's Article 2 power. He is the CEO of that department, in a sense. He had the right to nominate Sessions, and he has the right to fire Sessions. He has the right to make an interim appointment. There are several courses he could follow to do it under the Vacancies Reform Act. He could do a recess appointment. There are many interesting and complicated issues, but you hit the nail on the head. Desperate is the word. This is grasping at straws. It's inappropriate for the president now to regret having appointed someone who cannot participate fully in the process.
He recused himself the day after he was confirmed.
Yeah.
It is outrageous. All right, stay right there. We got to take a break. More with David Schoen, more with Sarah Carter. All right, final moments here with investigative reporter Sarah Carter and our good friend David Schoen, criminal and civil rights attorney. We got 30 seconds each, and I guess Sarah, will start with you, and that is, are we going to learn about more spies? How many potential spies were in the Trump campaign?
Well, I'd like to know that myself, Sean, and I think that so would members of the House Intelligence Committee and members of the Senate Judiciary Committee and others who are investigating this. There's been a lot of back and forth on whether or not this person was a spy, an informant. I think that just begs the case. We know for a fact that they were collecting information and then reporting that back. So, of course, they were spying. That's what they were doing. They were collecting information and probably utilizing people as conduits. So I'm guessing there's more than one. The FBI usually has more than one, and that'll be interesting to find out. I think we also have a lot to look forward to in the upcoming week with the Inspector General Michael Horowitz's report. That'll answer a lot of questions of what happened into the Hillary Clinton email server investigation with the FBI, which then again crossed over into this investigation with Russia. It's a lot of the same players.
We'll give the last word quick, David.
Okay, you just heard from the most talented investigative reporter around, Sarah Carter, a number of facts. Those facts should have been taking place in a third world country or the Soviet Union, maybe. God forbid the day comes when, as the New York Times suggests, we should accept as normalcy a spy in the camp of the presidential campaign, a small cabal in the Justice Department deciding to send that spy into the camp, a rigged Mueller investigation, omitting material from a FISA application. God forbid the day should come when the American people stop questioning those kinds of activities. It's not a conspiracy theory. These are facts that demand answers.
All right. Thank you both for being with us, David. Thank you. Sarah, we'll see you tonight.